Hey guys, Helen Hartsmith here again from the Heart of the Witch's Path YouTube channel. Hope you're having a good day. I really am. Let's talk about Imbolc. Imbolc is one of my personal favorite Sabbats, mostly because it is connected with my patron goddess, Breed. So that's really cool. It's also a really special time for my coven because this is the time for dedications. We also take the time to rededicate ourselves to our patron goddess for our coven, and we rededicate ourselves to each other. So it's usually a pretty moving ritual for us as a coven. And so it holds a lot of meaning for us. Now, Imbolc, when we're looking at the Wheel of the Year and the story that gets told during the Wheel of the Year, and again, this is for us Northern Hemisphere folks. It's kind of a little different in the Southern Hemisphere. But from the goddess's standpoint, she's recuperating right now from giving birth to the new god at Yule. So she's recuperating, and she's kind of waiting for her regeneration and with the coming of spring. Now, from the god's perspective, he is a small child at this point, and he is also kind of waiting for spring and when he's going to grow pretty quickly once spring kind of hits. So that's kind of like where we're at in the story of the Wheel of the Year. So this video, I want to talk about the loose incense recipe that I have for this Sabbat, and I also want to share my correspondences and for various things like stones and colors and what have you. So if you're new to putting together your own Imbolc ritual, you might want to think about some of those things when we go over them. You know, when you're putting your ritual together. But let's start with the incense recipe first. This is probably one of my favorite recipes. It's really simple. Well, I mean, I kind of made all of these recipes with the intention of it was going to be plant matter that you could easily get your hands on. Nothing irks me more, excuse me, than having to have a specific kind of incense that I can't buy it anywhere but online. That's annoying to me. So I kind of geared these recipes so that they were easy in nature. Excuse me, sudden coughing, don't mean that. And it just so happens that a lot of these I've actually grown as well. So that's kind of special. So let's start off at the top of the list. And at the top of the list is basil. I actually grabbed my jars out of my personal herbal stash. And here we have basil. Basil is a really traditional cooking herb that's really popular, especially in like Italian recipes and things like that. It comes in a lot of different species, varieties, what have you. This is just your plain old typical basil, and it's one that I grew, and it's got some nice green leaves that I've dried myself, and here's what a clump of them looks like. So basil is always on hand for me. It's got some other really cool properties, and it's part of this particular recipe. Now, the next thing on the list is bay. Oh, and I should say, I'll try to give the parts as I go along, but if you have any questions about this recipe, I'm going to post it on my blog, so there will be a link in the description box below so that you can go there and check out that, okay? So bay, this isn't anything that I've grown, but I do have a bay plant that I have grown in a pot for the last several years. Bay is another really popular cooking herb. And what I like to do with bay, I a lot of times use bay as a whole leaf. And that's awesome. It's really good for burning, like writing your intention or writing habits that you want to get rid of and burning those. Bay leaves are really great for something like that. But this is kind of a bunch of broken up bits of bay. So when I get to the end of my bay jar, so to speak, and there's a bunch of bits, they're still good for recipes like this because this is, like I said, a loose incense and you're going to want to break this up. So make sure to use all of your bay and kind of go about it that way. So 1 part bay, 1 part basil. All right. Next on the list is frankincense. Normally, I like to have powdered frankincense on hand because then you're not busting it up yourself. Frankincense is a resin, and so it comes in little, well, these are kind of like little nuggets. And let me see if I can show you what this guy looks like, because I don't have any powdered frankincense at this point in time. I happen to be out. So this is a piece of frankincense, and so for this particular recipe, you want to put that in your mortar and pestle, kind of grind that up, or if you've got powdered, then it's much easier to deal with. I tend to like to have them both ways, so this happens to be the actual resin variety. So you want 1 part frankincense. The next ingredient in our little Imbolc incense recipe is myrrh, and myrrh is another resin, and I do happen to have myrrh in a powdered form. It's interesting because they kind of run the same colors, both frankincense and myrrh. They tend to be paired parallel with each, or they tend to be paired together and have a lot of the same qualities. It just so happens that frankincense and myrrh are an incense, you know, on their own that is good for Breed if you're doing Breed work. So if I'm, you know, giving her thanks or something for something, I might burn one or the other. So powdered myrrh, you want 1 part myrrh. So that's 1 part basil, 1 part bay, 1 part frankincense, and 1 part myrrh. We're pretty easy so far, right? Next on the list is rosemary. Rosemary is another one that I have grown a lot in the past. It just so happens that my jar here is a purchased rosemary, but I love this jar because it's actually glass. This is so cool. So rosemary is probably one of my favorite herbs of all time. I just love the smell of it so much. So rosemary, and you're going to want 2 parts rosemary for this recipe, okay? And then lastly, you want some yummy cinnamon. These happen to be cinnamon sticks, and so you probably wouldn't want to use a cinnamon stick. You'd probably want to use some powdered cinnamon that maybe you have in your baking spices. I don't know. But I would definitely suggest using a powdered, again, because it's kind of ready to go and it's easy to mix. So, but cinnamon, and you want 3 parts cinnamon, okay? 3 parts cinnamon, 2 parts rosemary, 1 part each of basil, bay, frankincense, and myrrh. Super simple recipe. Put all your parts in a dish of some kind or a jar of some kind. I wouldn't suggest making like a huge amount because if you're only going to use this for one particular Sabbath, then you're going to use it one time a year. And actually, I would say that this size jar right here is probably a really easy, handy size to store any of your Sabbath incenses in, and then you'd want to like label them, and you probably want to put the date that you made them to and store that way. But I wouldn't even make this much. I mean, if you do half, then that's going to probably last you quite a few years. So you want to mix those together, mix it with an intention of making contact perhaps with the spirit of Imbolc, especially when you use it and burn it. Maybe you want to think some thankful thoughts for Breed or another deity or ant or spirit or something like that that is linked with that particular Sabbath. Mix it together, and I have a charge incantation that, again, I'll put that on the blog post so you can check it out there. I don't tend to like to say words of power in a video. It's a quirk. So, but I'll make it available so that you've got it, and then you can go about and use it at your ritual. Yay! Yay, recipes. I love recipes. Do. So that is our recipe for Imbolc Incense. I'm like super peppy today, people. I hope I'm not annoying anybody. Let's talk about some other correspondences that go along with the Sabbath of Imbolc. So let's start off with some stones. And I want to bring your attention to my little accessory that I'm wearing today. This is actually my Sabbath necklace for Imbolc, and so it is made with stones. If I could like get myself to position it correctly, I will do a little close-up into the double chin area in the necklace in just a second, but let's talk about those stones. So the stones that are associated with Imbolc would be clear quartz, citrine, bloodstone. I love bloodstone. It's so beautiful. Rose quartz, hematite, lodestone, ruby, garnet, red zircon. Don't have any red zircon, but that'd be kind of cool, right? Amethyst, which kind of makes sense because amethyst is a February birthstone, so that's kind of groovy. Garnet, onyx, and of course turquoise. So as I said, this is my Sabbath necklace. Now let's see if I can get a decent zoom in. Let's find the zoomer. Where is my zoomer? Oh, it's back there. Ha ha! All right. So, oh goodness, let's not do the double chin like too much here. Okay. So, let me kind of position myself a little. Yeah, I guess I could have, done this earlier. So, I happen to have found this particular pendant at, gosh, a Michael's or a Joann's or something like that, and it just really reminded me of Breed's cross, and so I thought, well, that's perfection for this necklace. And then we've got turquoise beads. The round ones here are turquoise, and then I've got other turquoise seed beads and some silver spacers and such. So this is my, like I said, my my Imbolc necklace. So let's just kind of bring ourselves back out and talk about the rest of the correspondences, right? Alrighty then. So next on the list of correspondences would be colors. Blue, obviously, that's a very popular color, especially for my coven for this particular Sabbath. White is another popular color. Orange, red, and yellow. Okay, those are some good colors. Now, symbols that are associated with Imbolc. Another word for Imbolc that some people use is Candlemas. So candles are a really important symbol for this particular time of year. Lamps, it's kind of representing that whole return of light to the world. I mean, we're not quite there yet, but there's some stirrings that's happening in Mother Earth as she's, beginning to come out of her slumber from the winter. Okay, Breed's cross, as I talked about earlier. The Priaphic wand. The Priaphic wand for my coven, we have one, and it's it's a symbol of fertility. And so I think that there are lots of different thoughts as to what a priaphic wand looks like. And so that kind of goes from like one coven to another or one tradition to another. And I would say that if you want to know more about it, then maybe research it, or if you want me to talk about it in a video, let me know and I can do that too. Next on the list are sheep. Sheep are really important this time of year for an agrarian society. I believe this is the ewing time. Like it's like when they're having lambs or something, or maybe that's Ostara. Sorry, blanked there for a second. I don't remember off the top of my head why sheep are associated. I'm sorry. If anybody knows, maybe they can put something in the description box. I'm like totally blanking on why. That's bad. Sorry, guys. Wolves are also associated with this Sabbath. So are bears and stags and eagles. Ravens, groundhogs. Does that make sense? Because what else happens around this time? It's a little bit later, but Groundhog Day is later in the month of February. Snakes and owls. Now, when it comes to food for your ritual feast, a lot of dairy items are associated with this particular Sabbath. So, milks, cheeses, things of that nature. Spicy foods are also associated with this Sabbath. So maybe it's time for a good spicy chili or something along those lines. Raisins are also really popular. Pumpkin, sesame and sunflower seeds. And I think that really kind of comes back to the, winter is waning and the food stores might be starting to get low. And so seeds like that are kind of like really important just to kind of come out the other side of the winter. Poppy seed, cakes and breads are really popular. Honey cakes, pancakes, which I waffles and herbal teas. Those are all very popular for your feasting and something you might want to think about. I know that my coven for a few years, we like to do this quite often, so I don't want to say a few years, but there is a recipe for potato soup that I have that's really nice and creamy, and it's a good thick, it's almost like a stew. And so we've done that quite often for that feast. It's like perfect for that time of year, especially if it's like really, really cold. Let's see, goddesses that are associated with this holiday. I think we've talked about Bryid, right? Yes, she's for sure in there. Venus, Diana, Februa, the maiden aspect of the goddess. So any maiden goddesses, Persephone kind of is the first one that comes to mind. And of course, so is Diana and Venus. Aradia is one of them. Athena, Inanna, Vesta, Gaia, which I like the idea of Gaia because she's an earth goddess. And so this Sabbath happens to be about, waking up a little bit. So I like that she's in there. Selene, which is a moon goddess, and Branwen. Now for gods, we're looking at Pan. We're looking at Cupid and Eros. Valentine's Day is in February, which is just a week or two away from Imbolc. Dumuzi, which is a Sumerian god. Adonis, Bragi from the Norse tradition, as well as Frey. Frey, I believe, Frey is the god of love in the Norse pantheon. Osiris. Now, if you didn't want to make your own incense for your Sabbath ritual, then you might want to look at just a solid myrrh incense. You could also look at vanilla, dragon's blood, a cinnamon, and a basil. So we've got a couple of our, I mean, you could probably use any one of those ingredients, but a traditional incense that are connected would be one of those that I just read from. Okay, so there's our correspondences and our incense recipe for Imbolc. I hope that this is helpful for you. If you have any questions about the recipe or anything that I've talked about, don't hesitate to ask. Put it in the description box. I will get back to you as soon as possible. If you liked this video or learned something from it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. It's around there somewhere. I don't know. There's all kinds of links in the description box for social media. So take a look for the Facebook page, my Instagram, Kathy's Instagram. They're all there. You can also email me at heartofthewitchespath@yahoo.com. And like I said before, I will put a link there to the blog post so you can check out the recipe and the incantation there. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and thanks for taking the time to walk the path for a little while with me. Until next time, blessed be.